Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rick Matias. I'm the Assistant City Engineer. Obviously, I work with Aaron Traeger, the City Engineer, DCS Deputy Director, and Paul Cascais, the Director of DCS. So we'll be doing a quick presentation on Wallace Road, capital improvement project, and drainage improvement options. The first half will be more historical, just general information. Second half will be the various options that we've come up with so far. Wallace Road is located in the north end of the municipality, adjacent to Route 24 and the Canoe Country Club. It's 24 feet wide on average, 2,000 feet long. Most of the homes on the south end were built in the 1960s as part of the Wallace Road at Southgate development. Homes on the north end near Route 24, most of them were built earlier. One of them was built less than a decade ago. Currently, there's 16 total homes on the entire length, along with the Canoe Country Club across the street. We have various utilities on that street. Underground, the city has storm and sanitary. PSE&G has gas. New Jersey American Water has a 6, 8, 12, and a 24-inch water main. The 12 and the 24 serve a good portion of the municipality. Overhead, we have phone, cable, electric, and various other communication wires. As you all know, Wallace Road was included in the 2018 capital improvement plan. We had a public meeting on May 30th of this year. We had various residents come out and discuss the project. The bond was introduced at the May 15th council meeting, and it was heard at the June 6th council meeting, where again, you all had various residents come out and discuss the project with you all. Principally the flooding, right? So we have reports dating back as far as 1967 of flooding on that street in our street file. It's been included in our city drainage assessment report since the report was created just, I believe, over a decade ago. So the flooding there is not new to any of us. It's been a problem for some time. The area, specifically the north block, the dead-end block towards Route 24, has been part of the flood zone since FEMA issued the first flood map in 1977. This is the map here. That's the location. This is a zoomed-in portion of the map showing the original Zone A flood zone for that block. It currently still is in the flood zone. FEMA redid the maps in 2006 and reissued the maps. These are still the current maps for the city of Summit. Wallace Road is right in that circle there. So it's still under the same flood zone rules as it was when it was originally created in 1977. So this is our aerial view of Wallace Road with all the properties and obviously Canoe Country Club. The circled area is the culvert where the majority of the flooding occurs currently. And then the other circle is the storm sewer. It's a 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe that was installed as part of the Southgate development in 1960. The culvert was installed in 1963. This is kind of a poor scan, but this is the overall site plan for the culvert. It was installed again in 1963 by Union County. They estimated 440 acres of a drainage area to pass through that culvert, which is pretty significant. It's a large area. We've done our own analysis citywide, not specifically for this project, but just as an engineering study of all the drainage basins in the city. And Wallace Road falls under Drainage Basin J, which is 387 acres. So it's a little bit less than the 440 than the culvert was originally designed for. However, the majority of Drainage Basin J still goes through that culvert. So 334 acres passes through that culvert currently. We've also ran calculations for all of our drainage basins. This one's also a little bit difficult, but hopefully you all can see. Drainage Basin J ranges anywhere from a 2-year to a 100-year storm from 800 cubic feet per second of water to 1,700 cubic feet of water per second. To put that into context, an Olympic-sized swimming pool is 88,000 cubic feet of water. So in a 10-year storm, you have 1,277 is our estimate cubic feet per second. So you can fill an Olympic-sized pool in about 2-3 minutes. So it's significant. Now this is for the entire drainage basin J. If you look at the 334 acres, it's about 85% of the overall drainage area. So that ranges from 700 to 1,400 cubic feet per second. So I want to highlight here the 24-inch. I want to kind of circle back a little bit to the 24-inch sewer that was installed as part of the Southgate development. Mainly because the flows that are going to the culvert are the flows that are going to the culvert. We're not going to reroute an entire drainage basin. It's nearly impossible. The culvert is also owned by Union County. We don't control it. So we decided to focus mainly on this 24-inch storm sewer. That 24-inch storm sewer captures 53 acres of the overall drainage basin. Captures most of the new development from the 1960s, if you can consider it still new, and a good portion of the golf course. So just to summarize those numbers, because I threw a lot at you, right? So drainage basin J is where it's at right now, 387 acres. Approximately 334 of those acres goes to that culvert. We want to take out 53. That's the easiest and most effective way to reduce flooding in that culvert. Now, I also mentioned the golf course pump because there's a separate project that my office is working on with DEP and a separate consultant to replace the spillway at the golf course pond. So the golf course pond ranges anywhere from 1 to 3 feet deep. It's 1.7 acres in surface area. Doesn't provide a lot of storage. That is equivalent to about 3 Olympic-sized pools.
Can I ask you a quick question? When you say golf course pond, you're talking about the municipal golf course,
Yes,
not
the municipal
Canoe
golf
Brook?
course
Right.
pond.
I just
Yes.
want to make sure.
So it doesn't provide a lot of storage because it's small. But the gate provides an opportunity for us to alleviate some of the flooding. So with work that we want to do to remove the 53 acres and work that will continue with the spillway, we feel this will have a huge improvement on Wallace Road. So after the bond was heard and approved, we went out and got a survey for Wallace Road and the surrounding area. We looked at various options. We analyzed the survey and we started putting some work down and some numbers down. Now as engineers, we look at all options, right? So we've got the basic no-build option to the extravagant, outsized option of property acquisition. Mainly, most of the options are storm sewer additions, which is what makes most sense. Again, the culvert is county-owned, so we're not proposing any improvements to the culvert right now. The golf course, and by this golf course, I mean Canoe Brook Country Club. They already have several large storage ponds, so there's not much more that they can do as far as storage, and it's just basically a highly impervious site. Golf courses, although they're green, grass, great landscaping, they're impervious. They're meant and they're designed in a way to shed water quickly because people want to play quickly. So the equivalent of the golf course is essentially a residential zone as far as drainage is concerned. So we're not going to get much help there. It's the end of it on that one. Milling and paving for the street is still anticipated. That would be a part of the overall project for the drainage improvements. That would include inlet upgrades, sanitary sewer upgrades as necessary, curb repairs, and then obviously the mill and pave at the end. So let's get into the options a little bit because that's really where the meat is. Again, option 1 is no build, but it's not really no build. It would be mill and pave, the inlet upgrades, storm sewer or sanitary sewer upgrades as necessary, and curb repairs. Option number 2, we're calling it the Rose Lane upgrades. So at our public hearing, we heard from some residents that there was a significant amount of water coming down Wallace Road. You guys can all see the mouse, correct? And then sheet flowing across towards Rose Lane. And then going down driveways, and on several occasions actually going over the curb and onto people's lawn and then into their yard. So,
Sorry.
Yes.
Can you show us, where's the place where we saw the video of just the water just
So that is going through here.
right through here?
Okay.
Let me scroll back up. that essentially started down here, and the video trails up the hill this way.
Okay.
So this, if you see this little arrow coming in here, that is the majority of those 53 acres that are coming into the storm sewer. And that's where that, at the end of the video, where all the water was cascading
Right.
over the curb. That's
Was
where
right
that is.
there.
Yes.
So that's downhill. Going to the left is going downhill.
Yes. Going to the right is
Oh,
down.
going
Yes.
to the right. is
Going,
down.
so going towards the bodies of water here. This right here is the lowest point. This is the culvert.
Okay.
So all the water is essentially coming this way and then down. And then all the water from here is going this way and then into the culvert.
But the worst flooding where it was hitting the neighbors, going to their yards was.
This is here.
Oh, it's
because
there.
then the stream goes through these 4 properties here.
Okay. Thank you.
Right there. Yeah, no problem. So option 2 is to add and extend a storm sewer on Rose Lane. We have an existing storm sewer on Canubrook Parkway that connects to a culvert, an existing culvert here. So we would tap into that storm sewer, run a pipe and several inlets along the driveways, and capture all of the water that's sheet flowing onto Rose Lane and then going onto the private property. This is ballpark numbers. We haven't really sharpened our pencils yet, but this would add an additional $55,000 to the overall project. This one we're calling Rose Lane Diversion. So what we're doing here is we're going to install and upgrade the storm sewer at the Rose Lane Wallace Road intersection. We're going to run a storm sewer down Rose Lane and then do a separate direct connection to the culvert on Canubrook Parkway. So what's the difference between this one and the other? This one would capture those 53 acres of water that's coming down the hill on Wallace Road, and it would redirect it. So typically, those 53 acres of drainage are coming down the hill this way, and then making their way directly into the culvert here. This would bypass that and send it further downstream. Now, this isn't a slam dunk. There's more studying that needs to be done because we need to see what the effects are upstream, and how is that going to affect downstream going toward our golf course. So there's still more studying that needs to be done, but it's an option. There's also additional DEP permitting that's needed for this, because we would create a new connection to the culvert. We estimate that would be about $105,000 additional. Option 4 is grading reconfigurations. So this is the culvert end of Wallace Road. So this is the dead end. Route 24 is over here. So what we plan to do with this option is essentially change grades of the road and of the surrounding area to prevent the water from going onto the road. We would curb both sides of the road. We would adjust the curb height, the road height, and then between the curb and the Canubrook Country Club property line, we would add landscaping to prevent runoff from going onto the road. So essentially we're controlling the runoff and we're holding it back. Now this requires a significant amount of engineering, and we would have to, again, look into it deeper. We would have to work with Canubrook Country Club because we need to know how that impacts their infrastructure. So there's an upstream effect that we have to really look into. We estimate about $157,000 for that option. Option 5 is storage. So right here, this little cluster there, that is exactly where that water was cascading over the curb. And that is the entry point of the 53 acres of additional flow. What we would do here is essentially size a underground storage pipe beneath the road or even beneath just typical ground behind the curb. And we would store water. The design would have an outflow structure that would allow the system to fill up and then slowly release the water. Now it's not like holding water at the municipal golf course pond. This is only holding the 53 acres, not holding the 334. So it's a little bit more doable. Now the difficulty with this one is we have a lot of underground utilities, going back to one of the first slides. So, but if we can do it maybe behind the curb, it's an option. And this is also very dependent on percolation rates because we want some of that water to percolate into the ground. So we have to do some soil analysis as well. This estimate is about $400,000. Option 6 is heavy construction. So we would take those 53 acres, and instead of sending them or keeping them on Wallace Road at all, we would have to acquire some easements through some private properties on Wallace Road and Canoe Parkway, and divert a storm sewer down Iris Road, and then out to River Road, and then connecting it to an existing culvert that's on River Road, also owned by Union County, that then drains to the Passaic River. So this is not a particularly fun option, and it's fun maybe construction-wise, but not as far as everything else and the preparation for it, because there's a lot of costs, and there's going to be a lot of cost run-ups for acquiring the easements. So we estimate that to be approximately $800,000. And this one would also require additional DEP permitting because we're connecting a brand new connection to a culvert. Option 7, the least realistic option, but an option as an engineer nonetheless, is property acquisition. And there are five properties along the stream, starting from the culvert on Wallace Road, going towards the culvert on Canoe Parkway, and then eventually going to our pond, which is over here. We estimate that would be anywhere from $3 to $6 million just on property acquisition. There would then be additional work needed to create some storage to reduce flooding there as well. So, moving forward, we're going to continue to analyze these options. We're going to have to dig deeper in them. We just got back our survey this summer, and we started working on it right away. Most likely, it'll be a combination of these options of storage, diversion, and grading. That's the most realistic. Milling and paving, as I mentioned before, would move forward with this project. We're not looking to separate it out. At some point, we'll need input either from council or from the Public Works Committee, especially if the costs increase. We'll have to work with you guys on that. And we'll continue, obviously, to listen to homeowners. We'll continue to monitor storms. If everything goes well, we would look to break ground summer or fall of 2019.
Thanks, Rick. One question you said about the city's going to do work on the pond at the golf course. What exactly is it planning on doing?
So the city's working with the consultant to replace the spillway. It's essentially, it acts like a dam, but it's not technically a dam, it's a spillway. So the consultant has prepared plans for replacement, and they've now submitted those plans to DEP for review, and we're waiting to hear back. I think Aaron could probably provide more information if needed. He's more on top of that one tonight.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Rick. We're looking at a design, it's more of a horseshoe that it would have, and the intent of the design for the golf course spillway would be to allow more water to flow out in routine storms. Now, when you have the flows Rick had mentioned earlier, obviously all bets are off, but this for the lesser storms will absolutely allow more water to freely flow to the Passaic while reducing some of the logjam behind. So it would also have the gate or the valve that we have now but doesn't function properly. So for larger predicted storms, we could get a permit to lower the level of the pond to assist with some storage. Would include that. And it also includes the back bridge, golf cart bridge, I don't have the name, but would raise that some, again, to also permit just some more flow through there. So it's essentially, and actually the bridge going to the first hole. So it's the permit we have is for a triple structure replacement. So that's why it hasn't come very quickly. But.
And what's the time frame of doing work on that?
So the permits applications with DEP, we received information a week ago requesting additional information. So once that goes back, that should be permitted. So we have funding for the spillway and the rear bridge, but there could be a function of the permit requirements governing when we can construct if it's tied to trout or flora and fauna there.
Okay, thank you. Other members of council who have questions? Mike.
Thank you, Council President. Thanks for your presentation. Love the maps and very, very super informative. A question. If we owned the culverts, the ones that Union County had, how different would these options be?
We would definitely be looking at upgrading the culvert, but we don't, right? So we would be looking at potentially increasing the capacity of the culvert. Right now, going back to the numbers that I tossed around about with the CFS, the cubic feet per second, we estimate that the culvert is rated for about 900. So once you get to a 5 and a 10-year storm, it's already out there. That would be the number one thing. We would be looking to upgrade the culvert.
So the follow-on question to that is, how have we been engaging with Union County? I mean, obviously, this project has been in the works for quite a while. What has their response been to cooperate in this project?
So Aaron could touch a little bit more upon that, but before he does, I'll just say Union County has been replacing culverts systematically over the years. They've done Blackburn, they've done Prospect, they've done Division, and I think they've been focusing more on the, I'll say, higher priority, higher trafficed culverts. I don't know if there's any more information other than that, Aaron?
No, they own all culverts within the city, so they generally go after structurally deficient, so they're going more for the loading on top. To replace a culvert and increase the capacity the permitting is a bear to do that, because the rules do govern 500 feet upstream and downstream. You can't impact the 100-year storm. It's pretty tricky to actually increase culverts nowadays, and then that's been in for at least 20 years now, so in terms of the rules and regulations. So even if we owned it and opted to replace it on our own, I think we'd be challenged to just make a taller bridge that just all the water goes through. So, because probably if we did that, it would get stuck at Canoe Parkway then. So it's kind of a whole system starting at the golf course and then down to the Pacific River.
No, I understand that, but I guess that's part of my point. It sounds like we are like managing a portion that we can, and we're not looking at this holistically, because we can't look at the one down on Canoe Parkway. We can't look at the one on Wallace Road. So I'm not calling it a Band-Aid, but we're doing the best we can around those constraints, which are just frustrating, right? Because you'd think that an effective thing would be where the county would work with the municipality to look at the entire stretch and come up with a plan that's rational, where we don't have to do these workarounds because we don't own the culvert.
I think then we would be potentially just adding even more time to it to do that holistic approach. Although from an engineering perspective, we would love to do that and to be involved in that. You're probably looking at least a 4 or 5 year drainage study of the entire basin, from essentially its discharge point at the Passaic River all the way upstream to its highest point. But yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Matt?
Thank you, Council President. Thanks for that excellent presentation. How often are we getting the 5-year storms? Are we getting them every year?
So the 5 and 10 year storms are happening a lot more frequently.
Yeah.
So we're getting, I think we estimate about 3 a year.
3 5-year storms per year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's important to note, though, it's not
Yearly.
a 5-year storm doesn't mean it's supposed to happen every 5 years, right? So it's
Right.
just, okay.
Oh, you mean,
So
what does it mean?
It's more of a probability. So for example, a 100-year storm has a 1% chance of happening in any 1 year.
Right.
So so a 5-year storm, you can have 3 or 4 in 1 year. It's just not likely.
Right. Right. But
But
it's
happening.
very possible that we could be having 5-year storms multiple times
Yeah.
a year for the foreseeable future. And 100-year storms we could be having as well.
Yeah.
And so the other thing is, when they first built this property back in the 60s, was it flooding the exact same when they first opened it and first built it?
So we actually have some old letters during the Southgate development, that south end block. There was already a significant amount of water coming from the golf course. So, and I don't have it on here anymore, but that discharge point from the golf course at the top of the hill actually used to be a small stream. They used to cut across through Wallace Road and then down to Canoe. So even during the construction, we have letters of one resident that was on that block actually complaining about drainage already at that time. So
So it seems like negligence on the part of the original developer, but also the golf course, which is not in Summit, right? Not part of Summit at all. The Canoe Brook.
Country Club, it is still,
It's
so that portion of the golf
It's still
course
Summit.
is in Summit, yes.
Okay, forgive me. But if that wasn't a golf course, if that was regular residential area, we wouldn't have this problem either.
I think we would be seeing the same amount of water coming from
Oh,
that area. Now,
same amount.
if you were to say, that was residential, in a residential area right now, the rules would force you to manage the stormwater differently. If
Right.
you were to convert that now to a residential zone.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. And one thing I'll note, sorry to cut you off from your question, that decrease in acreage for the basin area, so the original culvert was designed for 440, and now we're talking about 334. It's almost negligible because of the more frequency of storms, right?
Right.
So you're getting more intense storms more frequently, so that decrease helps us,
Understood.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Nora?
Thanks, Rick. I really appreciate the detail. So in 1967, when they did this, we didn't have the regulations that we do now about runoff, downhill runoff, and all the things you need to provide to the planning, the zoning board when you're going to build something. And just to make so people understand, a golf course, while green, is impervious coverage, which is very similar to a residential development.
Right.
So they, in 67, if they had built a development there, it would be no different than it is today.
possibly.
If they were starting building it now, obviously things would be different because the regulations are different.
Right.
Has, just for people's understanding, what do you know has Canoe Brook done in the last, 20, 30 years to do anything to ameliorate the runoff problem?
Well, I know for one is they have a very large detention basin at the intersection of Bellevue. It's actually not an intersection, it's a bend in Bellevue, which stores a significant amount of water. And I think you're aware of one of the projects they had, right?
That's all I'm aware of. They did some just inner site development for their own doing, some under drains and projects like that. But primarily it was the large basin, which is about 10 years ago. And if you've gone by in some storms, you'll see it does fill up pretty significantly there. So it is doing its job, but it's just a sheer quantity of water. And I would guess, I'm not sure, that they probably keep their ponds a lot, dredged more often. Possibly there's still requirements for that to make it very challenging. So, but that said, with that flow, even those ponds being 5, 6 feet deep, it's still just a lot of water.
Right. And they, they're uphill. So in your 7 options, there's nothing in there that's making an ask of Canoe Brook. Have you considered that and decided it didn't make any sense, or what?
I think the original, and it just predates me a little, but when they put in the last basin was a result of the city requesting additional.
Mhm.
But at this time, we can't, I'm sure we could argue that they're making the situation worse, but I'm sure they'll counter-argue that it's development upstream. So we can't really prove that they're doing anything and force them to do it. So we can definitely try the, asking route again. I mean, we have met with them a lot, but I think they felt they did a pretty significant improvement already. So I'm not
Right.
sure how
I
willing
was just
they-
curious.
Yeah.
So you think that the combination of diversion and milling and paving and would make some significant impact, won't fix everything, but make an impact? Okay, thank you.
Beth?
I want to go back really quickly and make sure I understand. The golf course, the municipal golf course pond project, that's going forward regardless of what we decide to do on Wallace Road. Is that correct? And that will ameliorate the problem somewhat, but it won't fix the problem. And then I just want to thank you guys for putting together this presentation, putting so much time in it. We've heard from the residents several times about what an issue this is. It's near my neighborhood. I see it all the time, and this is something that the residents have been living with for a long time and really needs to be addressed. So thank you for focusing on it. We're going to focus on it as well and make sure that we get this done.
I know there are residents out there who've been waiting patiently, so I want to give them a chance if they have questions, want to come up, ask questions now. Now's the time to ask or discuss it. Come on, Terry. Just, the routine to identify yourself and your address,
Absolutely.
please.
Terrence Hayes, 17 Wallace Road. Hayes is the spelling of my last name. Thank you, Ms. Mayor and Mr. David, for letting me speak. I appreciate the work being put in by Rick, Aaron, and Paul to kind of put this together. Really appreciate the time. I just want to ground you all in the issue itself, and I'd invite you all to my home tomorrow night, because I'm pretty sure with the remnants of the hurricane from the Carolinas coming up, you'll see this real time. What you'll see is the town sewers coming the opposite way, so flowing out. You'll see the culvert stream flood out halfway up my lawn on 17 and halfway up my neighbor's lawn who's here on number, I guess that's 15? 21, the next one up. But you'll see it. You'll see homes, my home and Route 24, which is dead-ended, as you know, trapped, because the water will come all the way over Wallace Road. You have a safety issue. The people right to the immediate left of me just moved in September 1. They're renting their property. They're surgeons at Morristown Memorial Hospital. I will be advising them to park their cars up the block as we do so that they can get out in case of an emergency. I mean, it's a severe situation. I appreciate the work being put in, but it's been a really long time, and it's time to start, putting some action. I have met with the county and their view, and I appreciate you asking, because I think they have a responsibility here. Their stuff, their culvert works as designed. It's supposed to take 3 feet of water. They came out, they looked at it, they said they're comfortable with that. I've met with the golf course, and the golf course says it's, the top of Summit that's hurting them, coming on them, and they need to get the water off. The golf course, though, gets the water off their fairways by putting new drains in all the time, and you can see it. They put white pipes in, no permits, right into the culvert. So if you look in the culvert, you see little white pipes that are in there that are not the original pipes. They're put in to clear off the fairways so the golfers can get through the next day. So I think, I don't know what we can do with the county, but I think we have to take task to the golf course as well. I believe your one plan about putting something to keep it on the golf course on the other side of Wallace will not work. I think they won't have it. They won't have it because it's going to hurt their golf course. They will not accept that, and I think that would be a tough one. I love the plans of going up Rose Lane, at the same time fixing the spillway, which we've been working on for years in the golf course that's blocking the whole thing up at the municipal golf course, and I think we would be good.
Okay,
So thank you all. I appreciate your time
thank you.
and your work.
Thanks. To the question about the golf course and putting in additional piping system. Have you guys looked into this? Or if you haven't, I think we need to look into it, right?
They had one permit, again, I don't have the information with me, but it's within a 10-year, they did some under drain project that was permitted. Anything since then we're not aware of, and we could absolutely look into, because
I think...
generally we
yeah.
see, I guess we can't see the far side of the golf course to see if work's going on, but anything like that, if you ever see heavy equipment, absolutely let us know, even if it's just someone else's property. No one wants to be a snitch, but it's just stuff that impacts everyone.
No, I mean, things should be permitted, right? So,
Appreciate your consideration on this and trying to get something done here.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak? David?
Dave Goodstein, 25 Wallace Road, Goodstein. My concern is, I forget which option, maybe number 3, where the water was going to come down Wallace and then make a left onto Rose. I live right on that corner. I've been there for 26 years. And the major amount of water that comes down Wallace Road comes from the southern end. So I believe that's what you said, that's where majority. But that water is coming off of the golf course. There are no ponds up on that end. Is there any way to get the golf course to put a retaining pond up there? Because that water comes off of Woodland. There's a trench or a culvert. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, so right
That overflows.
here, this is the majority of water that I believe you're speaking of here.
And a little bit to the left more.
Down here?
Well, from the corner on.
Oh, from here down, you're saying this whole
Yeah,
area here? Yes,
the
so
water
this is
just pours off of the golf course over the curb into
Yeah,
the
this
Wallace.
is just general sheet flow. Now, most of this water right now is running down the road, and then it either gets captured in an inlet, which most of the time it doesn't. It just keeps sheet flowing. With the milling and paving, we would install a proper crown on the road and get it to drain into the inlets. And then down here at the intersection, that's where we would divert it potentially.
Well, how are you going to
down
divert
towards
that? Because that's my house on the corner, and that water just comes right up the, off the,
Onto your lawn.
right, the
Right,
sidewalk.
so going back to this option here, so this is an extension of a storm sewer that is on Canoe Parkway. So this green line is a pipe. This little square, I don't know if you could see it very well, but this, that one, and that one, those are 3 inlets that we would be installing along the curb line to capture any of the water that is sheet flowing down
Because
the
there
hill
are no
and onto
sewers on
Roseland.
Rose.
I'm sorry?
There are no sewers on Rose Lane.
No. There is no storm sewer, there's
Right.
sanitary sewer, but yes.
But what's
So
going to
this
stop
would
the
be
water? How are
at-
you going to get that water to make a left turn? Without
Again,
putting a
that
wall
would
up?
be with grading, that would be with our milling paving.
But the amount of water comes, it's 6 to 8 inches high, that water that comes down. It bypasses the sewers on Wallace right now.
Right, again, with the milling paving. So that's why inlets are spaced out along the road the way they are.
Right.
So if the road isn't paved correctly, you can have 50 inlets, and if the grading is not correct, it'll all try and make its way down to one inlet, and that's where
Right.
you get that 6 to 8 inch sheet flow. If the road is paved the right way, it'll slowly taper off at each inlet, so the proper amount of water will go to each inlet. And then by the time it gets down to the end of the street, it's not as deep.
Where's the water that comes off of Woodland, that comes through that little trench on the side of the road? If you go up Wallace and now make a left and come down, all that,
Oh, so
all
that
water.
little ditch along Woodland, that is actually a completely separate drainage basin that cuts underneath Woodland Avenue and then goes out to Canoe Brook and then goes off to the Pacific
So it
River.
doesn't make a
not
right
go
turn?
Yeah, it does not come down here.
Because about halfway
So-
down on Wallace, there's a section where that creek comes right out onto
Yes.
Wallace.
So the trench that you're speaking of is right along this section of Woodland Avenue. And then there
Yes.
is infrastructure in this area that diverts it and brings it down this way. So
All
it's
right, but
actually
now,
part of a completely
If you
separate.
make a right onto Wallace off of Woodland,
Mhm.
and about
Right.
500 feet up, well, maybe halfway down, there's a creek that comes off of the Canoe Brook Golf Course, where all the water falls out. That's where most of the water comes from.
Right there.
Yeah, somewhere in that area.
Yep. There's a head wall there. That is what we're talking about, the 53 acres that comes off of the golf course. That's what we want to divert.
All right. 'Cause somebody put sandbags there now, that's all they do. I don't know if that was the town.
We'll look at it.
You think it was
We'll
a
definitely drive by
private
tomorrow.
resident that the sandbag?
I don't know. I've seen them there for about 5-6 months now.
To stop the
It's
water
there
from
right now.
coming?
I don't know why they put it there. It keeps it from going to the left.
Dave, is it there right now? The
Last time I
sandbags?
looked, yeah.
Okay,
We'll check it out.
check it out.
Okay,
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? Oh,
I have
Matt,
one more
please.
question.
Yes.
The milling and pave, when you say summer 2019, you're not going to mill and pave before that, right?
No, no.
Because
no.
it would not
No,
make
so
any sense.
We want to keep it all in one project. Drainage portion would be done first, along with all the utility work, then curb work, milling and paving is last.
And which option do you think would, dramatically fix the problem? Not completely, but
Yeah, I think
dramatically
I
improve
think
the
it'll
product.
end up being a combination. I
Yeah.
think we've done storage before, on Waldron. We did storage underneath the road. We added storm sewers there, we diverted some upstream. I think you have to attack it in multiple ways. So, and I think that's what we'll end up doing here. Grading, diversion, and storage.
Mary, please.
Just a quick question. I know that this is projected for the spring, but, in light of the fact that we are going to get rain, we don't know how much, and the fact that it is hurricane season, we just don't know where they're going to come. Is there anything at all we can do to help the residents out short-term at all? I mean, he was talking about sandbags. I don't know what those do,
Yeah.
but is there anything at all, or are our hands kind of tied?
I think our hands are tied at this point. I think if there was a short-term fix, it probably would have been done before us. And we're somewhat of doers, right?
Right,
So
right, you are.
we see these problems and we kind of tackle them. I don't see anything short-term that can be done.
Can I ask you a question? As far as the depth of our pond versus Canoe Brook, you said their pond is 5 to 6 feet, or it's deeper than ours. Ours is 1 to 3 feet. If we made our pond deeper, would that make any difference?
Very little, just because of the flow that's entering it. So we did look in a few years just to the permitting process of it. It's not 1980 anymore in terms of, because once you start unearthing some of that, undoubtedly you're getting every fertilizer used upstream that we now own it. So the disposal of the dredge material is a challenge, and you would gain very little.
Got it. Understood. Okay. Steve?
I got a quick question. You know, I'm going to put my sewer hat on, if you will. Yeah, how about that, huh? But it's
What
not.
other hats you have?
Well, it was a prior life. But have we CCTV'd and have looked into like lining it to push the water out at a quicker pace or anything to that effect?
So we typically include all of the TVing of the sewer lines ahead of our projects, so we're not there yet, but we will. We will be TVing all of the sanitary and storm lines
Right.
In relation to this project.
But that could help if we, with the storms coming up, we could identify if there were tree branches or sediment in the lines.
Sure.
That's to Mary's point about
Yeah.
short-term fix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that I don't even know if I would put a short-term fix
If it's
category
possible.
in it, but it's yes, it would be good maintenance
Good.
and prudence on our
Okay.
behalf.
Good. Good.
And
Anyone else?
Steve,
Matt?
that was your previous career, right? Was installing?
That was selling, not installing. It's a big difference.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone from the public? Yes, please, come on up, sir.
It's my first time, so I'll let the other information.
Yeah.
Sean Cooksey, last name 41 Wallace.
Yes, great, thank you.
Cooksey, Cooksey.
Perfect.
Just what was brought up about the sandbags. That was done by the golf course after my neighbor had complained about the water flowing off on that one trench. It's approximately that first sand trap coming off. That's where all the flow is, that area right there, which is right next to my house. They put it out there after we'd asked, talking to the golf course, to clean out their area. They have all their trees, all the leaves will blow down the golf course, downhill, go into those culverts, go into their spots, so the water then flows onto the street. Maintenance on their end is part of the culprit, not letting the water flow go through. They put those sandbags out. They were out for about 6 months, I believe, ready to say. And then they took them off the street to repair the holes in their fence, so their dogs wouldn't get out of the golf course. So I just wanted to let you guys know where those
Appreciate it.
sandbags came. The golf
Good.
course acknowledged it, and they did that.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
it. Appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir, come on.
Evening. Joe Wagner, 7 Wallace Road. I might have missed, I was a little late. Has anyone looked into possibly dredging the river from Wallace to Canoe Brook? Because it's not deep. There's some walls there, but they're like deteriorated over the years.
Not the actual river. That gets where it's tricky in most areas in Summit. The city does not own or have jurisdiction of the rivers themselves, so that would take a real interagency collaborative effort to look at that. And again, you'd be up to permitting, because you can't make it so deep that you've now impacted somewhere upstream or downstream. But specifically right in that stretch, nothing formal has been looked at in terms of dredging. And I'm not sure how much you would actually gain other than maybe some increased flow or velocity just within the channel, because you're still really restricted by your downstream structure. So even if you get it there faster, if they're not adjusted, you just gain very little.
Just seems that if you do anything with the golf course, increasing any flow to the river can't handle it now. So, just seems to be a combination of both.
Right, ironically, the Passaic River actually has some capacity at this location. And the culvert you go over the spillway, that stretch there, because it goes under 190 River Road or like the Wells Fargo building,
Okay.
those structures actually have some capacity, which is why we're going to be able to do the golf course spillway project. Otherwise, if they were maxed out, then there would be little we could do downstream. So that's actually that's good information for trying to solve many of these challenges.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thanks, guys. Really great presentation about this. I think it's very helpful. I think when the residents came the last time around, we said this has been going on for decades and decades, but we've come to the end of the road. We're trying to not just kicking the can. We have come to the end of the road. This is the beginning of solving the problem, so I appreciate that. Thank you.